So Jim, that time when you started recording it, notified us and gave us the option to leave the meeting. I had never noticed that before.
We gave you the option to leave.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I guess if you didn't want to be recorded.
yeah.
Skype and not Skype, Zoom started that the end of December.
Which I guess I should ask you, Sandy, are you okay with us recording
Yeah.
your talk?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
See this. Freddie Hoffman. Butterfly in flower.
Listen, nobody wants to talk since we're recording now.
You got it.
You know, it's interesting. I think you'll notice that there is not a single macro picture here.
I thought there might have been one.
You mean the coin?
No, I think it was the half corked.
Oh, you
I
think? Yeah,
I thought
you
that
think-
was a 1-to-1 maybe.
Yeah, I'm not
Certainly on my
sure.
screen it was.
Yeah,
Um,
I was going to ask for that distinction between close-up and macro.
usually it's considered, if macro is when it's 1-to-1.
I got
It's
it.
the same
Yep.
size, you know,
or more.
or more, yeah, or more.
Recording in progress.
Thoughts on all this and kind of where we stand.
Well, we just keep hearing Biden administration officials saying that the science has changed, that they used to think that forced masking of children was scientifically great, and now the science has changed. That's not actually true. As Guy references, we haven't seen much difference in recent weeks. What we have seen a difference in is the political calculus. And parents are rising up and saying, you have got to stop forcing the masking of children against our wishes.
And we'll see. I mean,
Yeah, I think he's got, Jim has left us for a moment, but I think needs to mute everything if,
Hey, Bob,
yes.
I will tell you that somehow, when I'm just looking at the pictures, somehow I did miss one. Hold on. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I will give an extra comment to another picture in advance that I never saw till it was just on the screen
Mhm.
coming through. I don't know how I missed it. It is, I just double checked and it was in your list.
Okay,
But I will make another comment on it. Obviously, the person can't get an award, but it would have scored quite high.
oh, okay.
So
With amazing employees like these, it's safe to say nobody has more experience helping keep you safe than ADT.
Recording in progress.
My goodness, what's that?
It is. I don't know. Let's see, is Jerry Fagan on?
Tuesday tweets, first we have Dan P, who asks, what will be the U.S. reaction if China says truce to support Russia under the odds of military action exercises? That would be a big problem and would throw a wrench into things. So that's a good question, and one that foreign policy experts don't have an answer to. Lisa asks, how long do you spend preparing for each show? And then I meet with my staff at 11. Today, the best shows are changed about 6 times. Shows.
Did you get a complete recording, Jim, of the,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And we'll start here in another minute.
Well, it's actually about 5 seconds to 7 o'clock, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then.
I'm gonna stop this.
Okay. And I'm gonna ask everybody, if you're not muted, to mute yourself.
Ow.
I've been trying
I
to,
didn't. Oh, God.
to mute some people when I hear background noise, but if we can go ahead and get everybody muted. Just a couple of announcements, and then we'll get into our talk for the evening. I want to remind everyone about Creative Vision. Creative Vision is this Friday. and it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. There will be a reception for the artists and for the photographers from 4 to 6, and then a reception for the public from 6 to 8 on Friday night. Saturday, the exhibit will go all day, and all the voting has to be done either Friday or Saturday. Sunday, there's no voting. The awards will be given out at 1:30 on, or 1 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. So that's kind of the schedule for Creative Vision, and hope everybody can get by to see some of the great work that's been done there. The studio, we had announced earlier that studio modifications were going to be made in March. That's been set back to April. There's been a new facility manager who is coming on board. The previous facility manager left, so we're kind of pushed back a little bit, but it'll get done in April, hopefully. We're still looking for some volunteers. Bob Ricketts notified me the other day that he is giving up competition chair at the end of May. So we're going to need a competition chair starting with the competitions in September, and Bob will help whoever steps up to take that role, but we're going to need somebody to step in and take over his competition chair. We've also been requested to do something for Earth Day here in Sun City, and Freddie Hoffman has done that in the past, but she's going to be doing some traveling this year and won't be here to be able to lead that. But if we can get somebody to lead that, Freddie has, I think, all the materials that are needed for it, and so and I think you could probably help somebody in terms of letting them know what they need to do and that kind of stuff as well. So if somebody's interested in doing that, let me know. Field trips, we may have somebody. I've had somebody talk to me who indicates he may be interested, so I'm just waiting to hear back on that right now. And then external exhibits, we are looking for somebody to handle exhibits outside of Sun City. So with that, one more comment. We've been invited by the Hilton Head Photography Club. They're having an infrared workshop on March 23rd, and we've been invited to participate in that if we have any members who are interested in learning more about infrared photography. It's a full-day workshop, and I think they're going to start at Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah and do some infrared photography there. So if you're interested, I've sent out information about that, and I'll continue to send out information so that you can sign up for it. With that, I'm going to let Dale talk about education a little bit, and also about the Wednesday night walk-arounds.
Thanks, Jim. First of all, I want to thank everyone for participating in the classes so far this year. And just as a gentle reminder, the travel logs are free. So if you want to go to Chile or if you want to go to Paris, you can do that for free. We have another 6 weeks of classes. If you have any questions about how to register, it's on the website under the programs tab and then the education tab. If you have trouble finding that, let me know and I'll be happy to send you the links. As far as the walkabouts, last week we went to the Point area of Beaufort, and there were 12 of us. There was a variety of things to check out. We were there for a couple hours. The walkabout tomorrow will be meeting at Lake Somerset at 8:45 to carpool with the intention of leaving at 9. And we will be shooting on Calhoun Street in Bluffton. So if you want to join us, that'd be great. And do you want me to finish with that announcement that you sent me, Jim?
Either you or I can.
Go ahead.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, well, what we're going to do is in talking to the people in the walkabouts, it seems, I think it seems to be kind of a consensus that a lot of the folks are thinking that we should do it once a month instead of every week. So after tomorrow, what we're going to start doing is we're going to do it on the first Tuesday of each month. And so the next walkabout would be, I think, March 1st, I believe, is the first Tuesday. So after tomorrow, it'll be the first Tuesday of each month. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everyone. As you all know, Sandy Dimke is our speaker this evening. Sandy has spoken to our club in the past. We're very excited. I'm excited to hear her talk this evening. Just a little bit, Sandy was born in New York and she currently lives in Bull Point Plantation in Beaufort. She was also the reason why the Beaufort Photography Club started back in 2005. And in 2019, she was inducted into the National Association of Women Artists and serves on the board of the South Carolina chapter. She presently serves as a worldwide chairperson of the pictorial division for the Photography Society of America. So I met Sandy, I guess it's been 4 years ago, and I have to tell you, I am so impressed and learn so much from her every time I'm around her. What amazes me is that she is so creative and she always uses her creativity to come through her photos. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Sandy. Sandy, are you there?
You're muted.
Hey, Sandy, I think you're muted. Jim, can you unmute her?
I get asked.
I'm there. I'm sorry. I hit something wrong and I lost you guys' Zoom, so I had to unzoom and bring my Zoom back up. Thank you, Sophia.
You are.
Yeah, I'm more creative with the camera than I am with the computer, but okay, let me get this on full screen and do my little screen share and bring you up to my PowerPoint. So hold on here. So hopefully you are seeing my screen and the art of photography. Hopefully someone can unmute themselves and just make sure we're okay.
You're okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We're not going to talk about really specific things to learn, but we're going to talk in more general terms. Again, it's more like how to make your pictures more creative. And the idea is photography a fine art or isn't it? So that's the thing, that's the part that you've really got to start thinking about. Whether we decide at the end of the class tonight or the end of the presentation that photography is a fine art, you have to decide if your photography is fine art or if it's a little bit more snapshot or documentary. So hopefully by the end of this, we've got lots of examples. I've got historic examples. I've got my photography. I've got other people's, and we're going to talk about a lot of this, or I'm going to talk and you can click on and talk also and see really how much you can change your way of thinking. So before we can do anything else, we need to talk about what the definition of art is and what the definition of photography is. And I wrote a lot of this out this afternoon because I have a cold and I wasn't quite sure how my voice was going to end up with by the end of the day today, or if I was going to be sneezing in the middle of this. So I ended up putting a lot more things in writing. So you can actually read along. So the specific definition of art is something that is created with imagination and skill, and that is beautiful or that expresses important ideas of feelings. Now, I never would have thought that that was what the definition of art is, but I mean, it was wonderful. That's exactly how I feel when I look at a piece of art. It expresses, I'm drawn to it because it talks to me. It expresses some important idea or feeling that I have or that the artist has that I feel. And that's actually the Webster's Dictionary definition of art. So art is more a form of expression for the maker. Artists produce beautiful work, their creativity and their imagination is all put into it. I have to move something here. Okay, now I'm okay. And art is a medium that's tied to this emotion. Now, interesting thing, when I was kind of researching this, I learned that Leo Tolstoy, you know, War and Peace, Anna Karenina guy, he actually wrote a book on what is art. It was so important to the people at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, that he wrote a whole book on what is art. And he wrote that art is a means of communication. That's kind of different. You don't usually think about that. And allows the viewer to feel the same emotions as the artist to express them. Interesting. Okay, let's think about that. And as a result, the art becomes significant because it has the capacity to unite mankind in terms of these feelings. So what he's really saying is that it unites the viewer who's looking at the painting on the wall with the person who made the picture. So it's uniting mankind. His quote was, "Art is not a handicraft. It is the transmission of feeling the artist has experienced." So I'm going to want you to be putting these ideas into your photography by the end of today's presentation. So that was Leo Tolstoy. I was kind of surprised he got involved in it. Okay, so what is photography? Photography, and the dictionary actually says, is the art or practice of taking and processing photographs, not just taking photographs, but the practice of taking and processing photographs. So that's, again, kind of bringing us back to that whole art idea. So the bottom line that we're going to talk about tonight is, rather than documenting the subject before the lens, in fine art photography, the artist uses the camera as a tool, which we have to do, to create a work of art that reveals the vision of the artist. If the artist doesn't have this vision, then he's just taking a snapshot. We'll think about that as we go through tonight. So once you have that vision, your entire scope of your work will start to change. And I'll go back what Sophia even said, that I tend to be much more creative. I try not to be documentary. I try to look at things in a different way. The picture that you see behind my words right now is just a reflection of trees in branches in the water. And I went with the Carolina nature photographer several years ago to a park over in Charleston. I belong to the Charleston chapter. And so I went with them, and they're all taking pictures of the building and the ruins and stuff like that in the park. And I'm there taking pictures of the reflections of the branches in the water, because I just loved the way the lines were moving around, and just the water was creating these, the light was creating all these wonderful colors, the blues and the pinks and stuff like that. So anyways, moving along. Now, let's go historically here. We're going to ask the question again, is photography art? Well, what did these early pioneers of photography believe? Did they think they were creating art? Were they just so enamored with the idea of photography that they just started snapping pictures? So Louis Daguerre, first guy, one of the first people, that started doing photography. They called him the inventor of photography. Take a look at the picture on the right-hand side. He took this outside his window in 1838. Because the exposure took several minutes, most of the traffic is blurred out. And when the Impressionists, the Monets and all those people, Cézanne, when they saw these pictures, they actually liked them and that they tried to emulate these pictures. They loved that there was imperfections in them. And that's in a time period when people started doing more Impressionist paintings. So we actually, as photographers in the olden days, because of these long exposures, actually influenced art. The next guy, I didn't even realize that there was a father of art photography. His name was Oscar Gustav Reilander. And he actually rejected photography as a purely scientific or technical medium. To prove his point, he wanted to make images that imitated paintings. Now, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, now this is back in the mid 1800s. He meticulously combined over 30 negatives to print this single large image. Now, we wouldn't even try that today. I mean, we'll do the multiple exposures in the camera, but we're not, even back in darkroom days, to actually put 30 negatives together. That's how much he wanted to create art. He also did a self-portrait, which was, again, unusually creative for back then. He did a self-portrait as a double exposure. One film, and he just exposed both sides of it in his probably 8x10 camera or 4x5. So that's two pictures of Reilander. The other thing that he did, his critics said he really had the ability to capture emotion or sentiments in his work, which is what makes photography art. And he absolutely considered it art. Look at certainly the two on the left, and to some extent the one on the right, which looks more like a sculpture, in a garden sculpture or something like that. But and it looks so much like Botticelli's Angels and pictures of pictures that painters would have done of the Virgin Mary and stuff like that. So it's really was amazing to me when I started researching all this, how they really wanted their photography to be considered as much of art as possible. So then let's talk about, now we're going to move into the 20th century, because most of these people were ending their lives at the beginning of the 20th century. So let's look at some of the 20th century people, the pioneers, the masters that we know of. So the first one that comes to mind is Alfred Stieglitz. He was an amazing photographer. Look at the pictures that he did. And most of these, again, were in the early 1900s, the late 1890s to the early 1900s. The middle picture where he was down almost on the ground in the water, photographing the sidewalks and the trees and the horse-drawn carriages. Now, if that doesn't look artistic, it certainly isn't a snapshot picture. The one on the left, he did a lot of work in New York City of architecture, but again, he put that tree in front of it and really created the mood that he wanted to show about how he felt about New York. As you probably know, he was married to Georgia O'Keeffe too, but one of the things that he really wanted to do was to raise photography to that level of being considered an art, and people were starting not to consider it that way. So in 1902, he got a group of his friends together. It was an influential group of American photographers, and their whole purpose of this organization, it was called the Photo Secession Group because they seceded, was to accept photography as fine art. And he got works published. He edited and then he published a book, like a magazine, on photography, on photographs, which he put in there. He opened a gallery to show photographers' work, which was unheard of before that. And then he sponsored an international show. It was actually in Buffalo, but more than 500 photographs were submitted, and it was a sensation and significantly advanced the acceptance of photography as an art form. Now, the controversial part was what is significant about a photograph is not what's in front of the camera, but the manipulation of the image by the artist or photographer to achieve his or her vision. Now, they use the word manipulation, but it could be both. It could be darkroom manipulation and it can be camera angle. Again, it's separating that snapshot idea. It's not just what's in front of the camera, but it's how the artist, the photographer artist, manipulated that image, either different camera angles or distorting it to achieve his vision. Edward Steichen, another popular man in the early part of the 20th century, is a popular photographer. Look at that, the very moody street scene of the Flatiron Building in New York City. You can barely see a man walking down. The tree branches just add so much mood, and the blue tone, the cold tone that he printed it in certainly adds a whole mystical feel about the photograph. And he was also very much into architecture and lines and planes and graphs. And so he certainly did an awful lot with that, which almost looks like a contemporary commercial picture on the bottom there. And then he did a few pictures on the left-hand, like the one on the left-hand side, again, that were more emulating the fine artists of the day. Paul Strand, he was very much influenced by Stieglitz, and he did a lot more, and I don't have a picture to show that, but again, with soft focus, and he too loved the geometric shapes, the patterns, and spaces. And you can kind of see that in the one on the left-hand side. He got up very high in another building to shoot down on it, yet to try to keep the angles really straight of the building in front of him. So, he was very much of a pioneer in kind of architectural forms of fine art photography. Edward Weston, I definitely had to throw him in when I found out that close-up photography was going to be the assigned subject. So you can see his wonderful pepper on the left and cabbage in the middle there. I mean, if you want to see some really cool sensual macro or close-up photography, definitely check into Edward Weston and see some of his work, mostly from the teens and the 20s. He did keep on working into the 40s and 50s, but really take a close look at some of his great artistic work. Andre Cortez, again, worked in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Certainly, you wouldn't consider the fork or the fork and the dish as anything but artistic. How he made sure the lighting was perfect to have the reflection, have the shadow of the dish and the fork together, and really kind of cutting edge, much more contemporary than you would think for, in that time period. And he also started to do a much more interesting landscape, not your impressionist look. They're very realistic and true to life, but again, adding all those wonderful elements of composition that you already know about. But look at those, curves and leading lines and trees. I mean, this is obviously, I'm using a lot of my favorite pictures of these photographers, but this is one of my absolute favorite pictures of all time. Elliot Porter, we finally get somebody starting to do color. So he's doing some landscape works, and really putting forth some more interesting ideas on how to capture a landscape without telling the whole story. Concentrating just on the branches, on the color of the leaves, on the color of the rocks behind it. He was very important, a leader in landscape photography. Of course, our old friend Ansel. We couldn't do a presentation on the art of photography without including Ansel Adams. And I love the picture that he's of him, where he's actually posing in front of his picture, the moon over Hernandez, New Mexico. So, but you know, he's always been one of my favorites, and I tend to do a lot more black and white pictures because of him, because of his inspiration. Now we're going to go with kind of a wild thing here. Diane Arbus, I don't know how many of you remember her. She died 50 years ago, actually 51 years ago. She was definitely on the cutting edge. She wanted to do more marginal groups in society, more of a photojournalist, but she wasn't telling that story. She just wanted to capture these people in a very kind of eerie, raw manner. And I don't know, I mean, I know that her work has been is certainly exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art and many other, you know, well-established galleries. But it's almost hard sometimes to take a look at that as art. Her twin picture here in the middle is one of her favorite, or one of her favorites, is one of her most known pictures. But she just, you know, wanted to connect with kind of the a part of society that was very different. I believe she also did commit suicide later in life. So you know, she had a lot of problems herself and depression, but she certainly was a creative person. Now, Annie Leibovitz, who's still around today. I've got a couple people in here that are still around. Certainly the picture of the woman in the middle, the model, whether she's photographing it for the woman herself or for an article on New York City or what, I have no idea what her idea was on that. And maybe if I knew who actually was if she's an actress or singer or whatever it is, I would know more. But so creative with the colors of the gown and the boat and the position of the Statue of Liberty in New York City in the background. I mean, everything is just perfect to tell this wonderful story. And what she's more known for is her very creative portraits of celebrities. Now, this is Bette Midler here on the left, and you know, it's one of her most popular pictures that she's done, that Annie Leibovitz has done. But you know, just using the roses to cover up Bette and put her in that bed of roses is absolutely a phenomenal thing to do, and so very creative. So again, no, we're not talking snapshots here. We're actually we're creating these photographs. We're creating this art that she's doing. And of course, I don't know, I know she's still photographing, but I don't know if she's still doing babies and children and stuff like that. But I mean, who cannot love Ann Geddes and all her fun pictures of babies with the flowers and everything. I mean, look at that. And I think it's a Shar-Pei, but I'm not positive. But you know, the baby looking like the dog or the dog looking like the baby. It could even be the same two babies. I don't even know. But you know, this is where she took her portrait photographer self and kicked it up a notch and decided to do something entirely different and really make it a lot more artistic. And one of my favorite artists, photographers, who's working still today. I don't know if any of you have had an opportunity to actually hear Franz Lanting speak, but if you do, if you're ever at a convention or can get to a convention where and he probably is still doing workshops too. He's one of my favorite nature photographers. The picture on the left, he actually did a book, and that is on the cover of the book, and luckily I have it. Hopefully I have it someplace here. But you know, just the perfect reflection of the elephants, and using that mauve, that pinkish sunset that goes from the purple inside the elephant's feet there in between, right at the horizon, and then, you know, fading up on both sides to almost this mauve color. It blends so well with the brownish tones of the real elephants. And I just love the giraffes on the bottom, how he waited and he captured the giraffes at a perfect angle with the mountains in the background, and he made sure it was the time of day where he could get both the mountains in the foreground and the mountains in the background, and then the, you know, the sky behind it. I mean, it just, some of these you just they take your breath away. They're so beautiful. And the other one is an underwater shot. So I'm going to tell you about another little interesting story. Lord Snowdon, I hope you remember him, Anthony Armstrong Jones. He was married to Queen Elizabeth's sister, Margaret. Okay, so he was doing a book, he was doing a documentary on photographers. And he came to New York and he interviewed Ben Fernandez. And I don't know if any of you know Ben, but he died just a few years ago. He considered himself a photo anthropologist. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't a photojournalist. He wanted to tell the story of what was going on in the world. So anyways, Lord Snowdon asked Ben if he thought photography was a true art or just a craft. And Ben's answer was, when performing a craft, the outcome is usually predictable. In art, the end result is unpredictable. A photograph often takes on a mind of its own. It is then that it becomes art. And I think what he was saying here was that if it was a craft, you would just take the snapshot. The outcome would be predictable. But to make it art, the photograph has to take on that mind of its own, meaning the mind of the artist behind it. And when it takes on that mind and the artist can actually compose the picture to tell that story that will grab at the heartstrings of the viewer, then it becomes art. And this is one of his more famous, one of Ben's more famous pieces. He did a lot with segregation and race riots, and you know, a lot of work with that. And there's a picture of him in New York. So the point is that we've got to be able to cross over from documentary to fine art. So nature, photojournalism, commercial photography, all operates really in the realm of documentary photography. It's really going to be a struggle to pull one of those into fine art photography. Hold on. Thank you. I'm not going to say, and we're going to go through those, and I'm not going to say that a nature picture can't be fine art. It can, but it takes more work. Same thing with photojournalism and commercial. You're really going to have to struggle a lot with that one. Okay, so if a photograph is aesthetically pleasing, it doesn't mean it counts as fine art. Okay, all images convey some kind of emotion, but it's the intention of that image maker that sets it apart. So in my photographing the black-bellied whistling ducks on the left-hand side wasn't to make some great art piece. It was to actually photograph how many of them were in my backyard at that time and how they were just moving along without a care in the world. You know, that was it. It was no great art thing. The same thing with the ducks on the right-hand side. Basically just documenting that they're in my lake and moving along and look healthy and all that. So again, my intention is important in there. Now we're going to talk just a slide or two on Freeman Patterson. And I know your president, Jim, has a love of Freeman Patterson and his work. And so I wrote this out this afternoon in case my voice gave way by this time, but let's just go through it. So every artist is, first of all, a craftsperson, and you have to know your materials, your tools, your techniques. And we all know that in order to become a better photographer, we need to know what we're doing. We need to know our camera. We can't be fiddling around. We need to know some techniques to post-process it the way we want it. Because in digitally, everything comes out raw. So we need to do something to it. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Was someone talking to me?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So we do need to have all these techniques behind us, but no, and Freeman understands it, and he says no part of technical competence is sufficient to make that craftsperson into an artist. And he's very much an esoteric person. He said it requires caring, a passionate caring about things to make yourself more of an artist. This isn't to say that every work of art should be profound. It could be lighthearted. I mean, remember Anne Geddes and her little babies in the flowers. But rather that consciously or unconsciously, the artist has to deal with what really matters, what's in the back of their mind when they're photographing. So here's kind of an example. Freeman wouldn't just take a picture of the ferns on the left-hand side and maybe put a background behind them or something like that, or shoot it with a cloth or whatever. He would get in there and actually dissect it and photograph all the little elements in that fern. That actually is part of that fern right there. And he would see all the different shades of the fern and the lines and the curves and everything that make it such a complex photograph. So here, I took this picture. This is based on Freeman Patterson's get in there and shoot smaller ideas. So I took this picture in Savannah in the River Plant district over at shooting the Talmadge Bridge, and there's a water fountain there. And so I spent some time taking different pictures of the water jumping up, and I deliberately wanted to get both pillars of the bridge in, but really when I got home, that wasn't the feeling that I wanted. The picture I took was what I wanted, but I realized that was the picture. What's in red there, what you see on the right-hand side, is the picture that I really wanted. I wanted those lines to be much more important, those diagonal lines. I wanted them to be severe and straight in the diagonal sense, and really making a point in the picture. Yet I wanted the softness and the color and the movement. Instead of the staticness of those lines, I wanted that movement of the water to break them up. And that was what I was looking for, but I didn't even realize till I got home that I really only should have done part of the picture. So some little tips on here how to make the photo better. So here on the left-hand side, this was the original picture. I was photographing a leaf in front of a tree, an oak tree, and this was an oak leaf, and it was in the when we did have some snow a couple of years ago, and it had this wonderful little almost icicles, but it was snowdrops on it, and I really wanted to emphasize that, and I ended up taking a few more pictures that were much closer, but here's the end result. It was that little part of the picture that ended up to be this beautiful one on the right-hand side with the nice curves going through the picture, both from the veins and also the curve of the leaf itself, and then the curves of the bottom leaf on the bottom. So take a look at this. Is this documentary or is it fine art? Should I be looking in the chat to see if there's anything I need to? I see that there's 4 things in the chat. Jim, can somebody check the chat and see if there's something I need to deal with, or somebody asked a question maybe?
Yeah, no, there's no questions in the chat.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a nice flower. It's got a nice soft background. The depth of field is great. The focus is fine. Maybe not. These are your fine art ones, not necessarily here. look at on the right-hand side, look at how that leaf of the tulip really hugs it in, brings your eye right in, makes your eye want to go right to the top of the tulip petals. Beautiful picture right here. Same thing with the middle one, being able to, and the one on the right, being able to actually look in to the tulip, seeing the different lines of each of the petals, and really much more interesting picture than that first one. So now we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about, this is again a tulip that was backlit, shot from the bottom, cropped considerably, mostly in taking the picture too. I wanted to emphasize more the bottom of the picture, and I used a black background. And is there something? Okay. And really wanted to emphasize the lines, the color, the emotion that I was feeling in taking a look at this flower. And then I also put it into black and white, and look at how much even more like a fine art piece the black and white one looks. Really stunning. Now, here's a rose, and you guys, I shouldn't say that. You Sun City photographers, I know a few of you people sent pictures for close-up of roses and did a great job. So here's one of my favorite ones. I call it Whisper. And I feel like the mouth is open and it's whispering to me. And it's done very well in different competitions that I've been in. But when I started playing around with it, I thought that even this might be a better picture, even closer, more talking to me. You know, it's got that selective focus that I like. The rest is soft, not quite in focus, and that's what I want. I wanted just the mouth of that tulip to be speaking to me, but the emotion that it gives is what I was trying to give out. Hyacinth on the right hand side, I actually took a picture of the entire hyacinth. I took a bunch of pictures one day, came back, we had it in our garden. I came back, I looked and it was like, no, this is not what I want. This is definitely not. Went back out later that day and did close-ups of just the hyacinth, the side of the hyacinth. And that told the story much more to me than the documentary picture of the hyacinth. The same thing with the saucer magnolia on the right-hand side. I love to just capture parts of the flowers in order to make it look a little more artistic. High key, great idea. I use a light pad for this. Light is coming. In this one, the light pad was on the table and the flowers were put on the light pad sitting down. I raised the back of the white flower a little bit so that it was more, wasn't just flat, I could see it more. And just love the way the edges are still green and that have come out, and made more of a fine art piece on that. Same thing with this, more high key, not strictly, but you know, with a solid white background, backlit too, and making more of a statement with the composition, the wonderful curves in it. Might even flip it around the other way and see how that works. Will probably look more like a C actually, the other way. And two more, undocumentary, more flower pictures. With the one on the left, again, this is not in a nature competition. This is in a art competition. The saturation was bumped up, but I also added the contrast. I really was heavy on the contrast, so you could really see the lines in it, the structure in there. Made sure it is perfectly sharp, because that was important, especially with the little things that come out of the middle. But it's more structural. You could see this in a dining room or something, and the same thing with the lily here. they've got to be in focus. Those little things in the middle have to be tack sharp. The rest of it doesn't. The rest of it can float away. But this again was a high key shot with a background. So this was a macro shot for those macro people, or not a macro. Well, it was actually a macro, turned out to be a macro shot, but I photographed a seashell, a scallop shell. And I kept playing with it to try to come out with something, added more shells, less shells, back and forth, until I just photographed the ridges themselves, which you can see here. The picture is over it, but just those ripples themselves, or they're not ripples, but the curves of the shell really made a wonderful picture in itself. So let's talk a little bit about landscapes. So this is my version of a landscape. No, I do have real landscapes too, but this is a fun one. And sometimes you need to break yourself out of that rut, of that snapshot rut of landscapes, and just getting the composition and the lighting right and everything. Do a swipe, do a vertical swipe, and tell the story that way. I see all those wonderful fall colors behind it. I see the black, the blackness of the tree bark and the tree trunks, and it really tells a great story for me. Sorry, hold on. Totally different now. This, we just kept it with the trees, the tree trunks, and focus more on the color of the leaves. That was going to tell the story. The trees really fall away. You don't even really notice that there's trees there. It's, can I see the leaves through the forest, or the forest through the trees? The center focus on this whole thing is those beautiful colors of those leaves. And the tree trunks just add more interest to it. Here, the sun was not out. It was a very dreary day like today. This was in Cape Cod, Corporation Beach, on the bay side, which is normally no waves, very few waves, but it was a very, very stormy time. And I was able to get out there and photograph it. And I really was not able to take a lot of pictures because the weather was so bad. The rain was hitting my camera and everything. And I really didn't want to stay out too long, but I wanted to somehow give that feeling of how bad the weather was. So I didn't want to shoot a slow shutter speed because I wanted to freeze the action of those waves and really tell that story. Yet I needed to also have a slow enough shutter speed so that I could capture the bouncing of the water on those rocks. I needed both of those together to make that story be told. So that was one of my favorite weather shots that I've done. Okay, so this shot was taken in Fiordland National Park in New Zealand, and you may see a scene like this as you travel around. I mean, it's a very typical scene, but instead of just snapping the picture, you need to capture what you see and what you feel. Look at the foreground here. The foreground almost replicates the mountains. The leaves and the brush and stuff like that kind of replicate the bottom, replicate the peaks of the mountains. We've got the clouds in there to fill in that V area. Yet we have the nice V. We've got nice framing on the top. Wait if you can for a little while, or throw something into the lake to give you that round ripple effect in the middle of it. It doesn't have to be a mirror image to make it a great picture. I took several pictures there, and I actually like this one better with the circle of the ripples in the water than I did with the strict mirror image of there. So this is a typical shot that most people will run into. A nice landscape picture. So stop before you snap that picture and and create what it's making you feel. When you walked over, I was, with a friend of mine and possibly my husband too, I don't remember. And we were both like, oh, it was just so spectacular. And we looked at it, it just took our breath away. And then I was like, okay, how do I capture this so that I remember this wonderful feeling that I had? Then when I came home after working so hard on that, oh, I'm sorry, we'll continue on then. I thought I had changed this one to black and white, but I guess not. So this was another New Zealand picture actually. And I really wanted to show the shallowness of it, that I was almost a part of this whole scene with the birds. I was down there and I loved all those circles that the waves created right on the floor of the beach. So take a look at the colors, look at the reflections that you can create in that middle area with the rocks. And then I was able to capture the turquoiseness of the water as you go farther up into the picture. And then finally the peaks that made it more of an interesting picture too. So here, this is Lake Matamesquite in North Carolina. And I hope many of you know this site or know this park or and have been there and have photographed it. It was one of my kind of bucket list items. Unfortunately, the day I was there, which was less than 2 weeks ago, it was very cold, very choppy, very windy. It was not the Lake Matamesquite that I pictured in my mind. I wanted to really come up with the way I felt when I saw it. And I was very disappointed that I couldn't get the wonderful reflections in there, but I still had a really great feeling when I saw it. So this is what I was able to do in Photoshop. Well, not totally Photoshop and I mean, in Lightroom and Photoshop. On the top and the bottom, I just vignetted it. So it just faded away. It was just white. And then I made it high key so that most of the ripples disappeared. They're still there, but they're almost just like small lines. Yes, I don't have the reflection, but I do have the feeling that I have when I was there. So really I'm going to go back. And then this was what I ended up printing this past week of Lake Matamesquite. One of my favorite pictures that I will admit, I took it in the winter time. The sky, there was no leaves on the trees. This is Angel Oak on near Charleston. And the sky was bald. And so I did sandwich it with a picture from Italy that I had of a wall in Italy that had a lot of, like a stucco wall with lots of different shades on it. So kind of gave a better feeling to the back of it. So here you go, all you bird photographers. Left-hand side, great picture of an egret with the fish. Everything is, good about it. Got nice detail. Nothing's blown out, in focus. Everything's great, but it's a bird picture. That's it. It's a bird picture. The one on the right-hand side, however, tells the story. You can see the look in the smaller, the other egret, the one who's in the middle, who's looking up, wanting some of that food too, wondering when it's going to be, his or her turn next, but waiting patiently. A great interaction. I tell the story that I went to Africa a few years ago, and when I went the second time, I wanted to make sure I got interaction. I wasn't just there to document the animals. I wanted to see interaction. I wanted it all to tell a story. And this is one of my favorite pictures because it does tell that story. There is the wonderful interaction. Left side, a couple herons, you can, in the water, nothing exciting about it, but you can take that picture, that exact same picture, and make it more into an artistic one. I made it into black and white. I made it high key. I vignetted around the edges of it. And look, it's very cool. It's actually a very artistic storytelling picture. again, another one of my favorites from Donnelly. I just love the way these mating birds were dancing with one another. You know, you can see the splashes of their feet, the water splashing, and you know, certainly the colorful reeds in the background. Again, this could be fine art, or catching an egret in a snowstorm. So same thing here with the left and the right picture. Both are, you know, great pictures of spoonbills. If I wanted to document a spoonbill, you know, tack sharp eyes, you know, you got the detail in the feathers and everything. Same thing on the right-hand side. You can see all the elements of his body by shooting the underneath area. But this shot of the egret would be considered more fine art photography. And even in black and white, it really works. Now, definitely it's not documenting it because you can't even tell that it's rose colored. So it really works just as well in black and white as a work of art. Now, so now that we're looking at the black and white idea, color into black and white. Does that necessarily make it fine art, from documentary to fine art? Not really, but sometimes it really helps. Look at the picture on the left-hand side. Fine picture. You've got the slow shutter speed, which gives you that feeling of you know, peaceful movement, serenity almost. The clouds aren't really doing anything to that serenity part. You know, they're kind of moving along, and our puppy clouds and all that. Making it into black and white changes the whole concept of it. Now I almost feel like I'm exactly in the water with those. I'm gonna have to move this so I can see my picture. You don't see that brown beach. The beach becomes part of the water. You feel like you're walking right across into this ocean, and you don't see anything other than that. And look at how it brings out all the clouds too. Now, I'm sure you could bring out the clouds more with a polarizing filter or something like that, but it was very easy to do in black and white. So it did really make it a more of a fine art picture. Here's 3 pictures that all these pictures I took with the idea that they were black and white pictures. The one on the left, I took again, you know, 4 years ago in that snowstorm that we had here. Those were deer tracks in the snow leading to the lake that's behind my house. And I knew right away there was no color. It was snow. It was still snowing when I was there. And I was going to make it into a black and white picture. And I made sure I got down close enough to those deer tracks so that I had them really sharp in the foreground, and then they just lead it off back to the lake. The same thing with the tree. I shot this out in Nashville at a national park in Nashville, the Hermitage. And I knew that there was no leaves on it. It was in April. It hadn't come, the leaves hadn't come out yet. And so I knew it was going to be just a wonderful sculptural statement, because it had so many interesting lines and curves, and again, really spoke to me. And then, you know, made the background also black and white too. And the staircase on the left-hand side, when I saw the staircase, I knew that it was interesting enough that I could just make it a high key picture and work with it in strict black and white. So sometimes you just know when you're going to be out there taking that picture that it's going to be black and white. Took this picture out in Glacier, was out in Glacier for our PSA convention in Spokane. And we stopped in Glacier for a few days first, and had a hard time because had a lot of bad weather, but the clouds did break. There was some rays of sun coming in. But I knew, again, when I shot this, that the light wasn't conducive. Everything was so blue. So here's my black and white picture that I pictured when I was taking the picture. You can just see those clouds now are rolling right in. I can feel those clouds coming across the top of the picture. This is my Ansel Adams picture. Here, this is Cataloochee Cove in the Smokies. I just love this tree and I've photographed many pictures of the tree in Cataloochee Cove. But again, I knew it was going to be black and white. I have it in color, but even when I was shooting, because of the different colors of, it was fall, so there's some different leaf colors, and it just was going to be too confusing. It wasn't going to bring out the tree. All your eye was going to look at is the color. So really think about putting some of your pictures into black and white and seeing if they will become more fine art pictures. I took this one at Port Royal Cypress Wetlands. This is a tree, and this is the shadow, not reflection, the shadow of the boardwalk that you walk on. And this is my urban nature. I just loved it. I have not submitted this to any contests or anything else. I don't know if it'll ever do well, but I just thought it was cool and I just loved it. So there it is. And there was very little color in it, so it was easy to make into black and white. All right, so last week out in North Carolina, I saw this church on the right-hand side. Saw that it had it was whitewashed, like brick whitewash, but it had a lot of texture in it, almost a dirty look about it, but it just really looked very, very cool. You don't see many pure white churches like that. So we stopped, I took some pictures, but I had to keep playing with it because I knew there was something that I wasn't seeing that it was. And then I looked and I realized that if I just concentrated on that top area, and I ended up doing a black and white picture of it. So I've got the white cross, I've got the shadow of the cross, I have detailed both in both roofs, and it does separate it a little bit from the sky. I think I really will take out the little puffs of cloud to the top left, just above the roof line on the left. I think they're distracting, so I probably will take those out. But I really like the way the picture turned out. This is my twin barns. This is done very well for me in Photographic Society of America. Now take a look on the left-hand side. I took about a dozen pictures of these two barns together till I could get it right. And if you look at the right side, you can see that I finally got the right idea. What I did is, so I hated that the tree up on the top there. I hated that pole in the middle, the utility pole. I didn't like the spacing between the barns, and I didn't need a lot of the stuff on the bottom either. So I kept moving myself to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left, till I got that the two barns were next to each other, were coexisting with each other, that there was a nice V on the, if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, there's a nice V between the roofs, the two roofs, the right roof of the left picture and the back roof of the right barn. I love the way you can now see some more definition from the plows in the field above. I cropped off some of the bottom area. By moving over, I was able to use the telephoto lens, and so it got everything much closer together, and I was actually able to get some little trees that would come in the front of the left side barn. So amazing what you do when you look for a picture and know there's something there, but you really have to work on it. I just kept moving to the left till I could get the composition that really worked. And again, here's the picture. My Tomatley Oaks, I waited for a morning when there was mist on the bottom. Here, circus, carnival, not circus, carnival. Okay, very much of a documentary shot on the right-hand side. Even with the nice curve of the lamppost that adds interest in there, and the green that's breaks it up, and it's still a documentary shot. However, making it into black and white, shooting it from a different angle where all you see is the lines and the patterns and the triangles and the diagonals. It's now a much more of an artistic picture. All right. I even hate to admit that I took this picture on the left-hand side. I did. I was tired. We were almost done taking pictures in this place. I was ready to go home, but I saw something there and I kept taking 2 or 3 pictures, but I didn't use HDR. I should have, obviously, I should have done a lot of stuff, but this is what I had. But I kept going back at home to this picture because I loved it and I loved how interesting I felt when I was there. So I made it a little more contrasty. I obviously cropped into more, cropped some of the windows out and cropped into the windows and stuff like that. Now wait till you see what I ended up doing. And this I love. This was the end result of that picture. So I made it a little much more contrasty. I brought toning into the middle of it and made it feel the way I felt when I walked into this old storeroom. I'll just go back. There you go. And then this was the final shot. So nothing is ever hopeless. Sometimes if a photo means something to you or it moves you when you took it, put a little star on it in Lightroom and go back and see what you can do to make it the feeling that you had. Left side, photojournalism stuff, definitely totally photojournalism. On the right-hand side, it's got a story to it. Could be a little more artistic because of the X's and all that. I don't shoot a lot of people pictures, a lot of portraits, but I did this one on the left-hand side when I was in Cuba. And what I did with the right-hand side, I actually just turned the image. I twisted the image down to the right-hand side so he's looking down as opposed to where he was looking. So I actually just rotated the digital file, and then I used a sepia filter on it. So as Sophia said, I am a member of the National Association of Women Artists. And if any of you women in the audience feel you have some artistic ability and you could put a portfolio together, I know that the National Association of Women Artists, which was founded in 1889, is having another, they have an annual jurying in of artists, and they are having it, I think at March 15th is the deadline. So if you're interested in anything like that, please let me know and I'll hook you in with the right, or you can go on to thenawa.org. So I have, since I got in 2 years ago, I've been applying in some of their exhibits, and because they're not photography exhibits, it really, you're really competing against other artists. So I did get juried into the healing exhibit with this photograph that I took in Africa. And it's currently at the Mulberry Street Gallery in New York City, January 5th through March 31st. And the exhibit title is Healing. And when I saw the name of the title, I knew I had to submit this picture because to me, it says healing. And there was only 17 pieces of art that were juried into the show, and this was one of them. So I was very proud of that. This one, I say I don't shoot too many portraits, but this one was juried into an exhibit called At the Crossroads, and that's going to be February 15th through March 31st. And I think I titled that Undecided. She didn't really know what she wanted. This got juried into Art Fields, which is open to all forms of art. It got juried into the Art League of Hilton Head's Biennale exhibit a couple of years ago. And it did get an honorable mention in National Association of Women Artists. South Carolina chapter had their own exhibit called Inspirational Journey, and it got honorable mention. And one other one, I finally got an award in the National Association of Women Artists. Their 132nd all members show was last fall. And this picture actually won an award with all the other artists. So it was great to see a photograph getting an award there. So I got to show you this picture. So it won Best in Show at the Carolina Nature Photographers Association in 2010. Yes, 20 years or 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So it's a first place winner, but would it win in an art exhibit? That's, is it fine art? Is it gallery acceptable? Is it good? You really have to look at it. you can always submit something and see how, how the audience feels about it. But it was interesting to know that this got best in show in photography, but, would it do well in a straight art exhibit? So just keep remembering that the camera and the darkroom are only your tools, and it's up to us to apply this vision or message to our images. The vision, remember, vision, this keeps coming up. Vision is the determining factor in making fine art. We all have the potential to create art and to be extraordinary. So give yourself permission to go out and break the rules, because you know the rules. You know the reason behind the rules and why they work successfully. But have the courage and conviction to do whatever works for you. Open that door wide, create some art. Here's three of my favorite, some of my favorite pictures, just of mine, that some are old, 2009, 2012. This is the last one, Take the Long Way Home. I actually shot on my bicycle. I stopped. I usually bike in the mornings, and this is right here in Bull Point, and it was with my cell phone. So, and it still is one of my favorite pictures. So we often take photography for granted. We forget the small, unique miracles that occurs every time we click that shutter and create art. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. It turned out to be an hour. I thought it was only going to be 45 minutes, but that's the way it goes. Sorry, Jim.
I thought it was an excellent presentation.
I'm going to stop sharing here. Hold on. Okay, there you go.
I thought it was an excellent presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And very, very inspiring and very, very helpful, I think. So I want to thank you for doing that.
Okay.
And we'll turn the meeting over to Bob Ricketts to go through the winners of tonight's competition.
Okay, and thank you, Sandy.
Sandy.
All right, Bob. First, I want to say that we had 3 new members enter into the novice category this month, and 3 of them got winning ribbons. So that's very good. In honorable mention, we had White Flower by Joanna DiStefano.
Do you want me to talk about it as you announce it, or when would you like me to talk?
Yes,
Do you want to?
if you'd like to have something to say about that, would be great
Sure.
at this time.
Yeah, what I really liked was the white contrast with the dark green part of the cabbage and or the leaves in the background. I was impressed that so much was in focus as a macro shot, and certainly the subject matter with the circles in it brought your attention right into it, and all the curly cues and everything, all the curves. Really a great subject, and it worked very well.
And Joanna is a new member, or a new competitor anyway. In third place, we had Harry Surprise.
Okay, so click a little bit bigger on the Harris. Thank you. Okay, yes. Okay, so it's got a few flaws in it, but I think the important part, again, because I knew this was a novice, that they actually could get close enough to that insect to see all the eye and all the hairs, like he said, the hairy thing. I mean, look at how beautiful all the detail is in that. What's distracting, of course, is that orange petal that's in the front. And so I would probably try to, we'll definitely try to use a better depth of field, but obviously that's not going to happen. But maybe move when you're cropping it in Lightroom or Photoshop, whatever you're using, crop part of that out. You might not really need that whole part of the flower. The important thing is the insect, moth, whatever it is on there. But you did a spectacular job of capturing the face of that, the head of that moth. So you deserved extra credit for that.
So Bob,
I apologize.
Oh, go ahead.
I apologize. Dale Williams is also a new competitor winner. In second place, we have Old Timer by Ann Mager.
Okay, I really like this. I thought that this is certainly a great one to do for macro photography. I know I didn't see Mike Motz's program, but I know I've been to some of his programs and I know he uses the
Thank
innards
you.
of clocks a lot. So if that's where you got the idea, that was great. But it was sharp, it's perfect. It tells all the things that you should have in a macro photograph. The one thing I would suggest that you try to do that, just again to make it a little more interesting, if you want, is maybe try to pull the, I have to move this 1 second here. Okay, you have a little of the cover or the back cover in there. Try to put something on the bottom edge to lift the actual clock watch up a little bit so that the back is at an angle, so you see a little bit more of the back maybe, and maybe the clock seems to be a little coming, that's falling into me a little bit. So maybe try something like that, maybe give a little more of the inside or not. But excellent job.
Okay, and in first place, Greg Passantine with Ice Drop.
So what, obviously beautifully done. I love that you were actually able as a novice to capture the drop and the drop within the drop, and you can actually see a little blue in the drop within the drop. Very clear, very sharp, nice diagonal line. I love even keeping in that green leaf with the curlicue at the end. It definitely adds some interest there. The only thing I would try to do is to tone down that the highlight in the leaf. It is very distracting, and either clone it. Again, this is not a nature competition, so you can do whatever you want, but clone it so that the green goes all the way and you don't see that, or just try the highlights and bring down the highlights. Again, you're a novice. I think this is great for a novice to actually attempt this and have it come out successfully. So congratulations.
Okay, moving on to the intermediate. Honorable mention, Sam Machetta, 3 feathers.
Okay. I see you gave 2 honorable mentions because I liked both of them and I didn't know if that was allowed. Yes, this is simple. This is we're talking about documentary. This is documentary, but the subject was close-ups and just the beautiful color that you were able to capture in it with the backlighting that you did and the detail that you captured, giving all those wonderful V diagonal lines going all the way up through it, keeping the 3s and everything. I just thought it deserved a little extra attention. So very good.
And also Brushing Up by Leslie
Brushing
Joseph.
Up. I could not give something to Brushing Up. Just when I first saw it, I was like, oh, what is that? And then as soon as I looked down on the right-hand side and I noticed that it was a toothbrush, I thought, oh my God, how perfect. I mean, to change the colors like that, to use the, an HDR effect or whatever, to really increase that saturation and make it to an abstract picture. You did great. Love the orange and blue going through. Again, nice and sharp. When you're looking at the top of it against the black and everything. Fun picture. Very good.
Okay, thank you. In third place, we have Love by Julia Parrish.
Okay, so I gave this 3rd place. It had all the right elements, certainly. The rose was sharp. I would have liked to have seen it a little lighter, a little brighter, but my eye goes directly into that. But the creativity of the person got way more extra credit on this one by just taking that rose and putting it on that paper that said love, 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 love. This could be a beautiful Valentine card. Did it on the diagonal, so your eye goes into that. Really good job. Well focused and nice texture on it. Good job.
Okay, in second place, Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Susan Ball.
All right, well, This again, you get extra credit because you were there at the right time in the right place or waited hours and hours for this to do that. Maybe it does it all the time. I'm not familiar with the workings of this iguana or whatever it is. But it's great. I mean, the colors on it, the yellows and the browns, the wonderful detail. You got the highlight in the eye. You know, really, the only thing that concerned me was it looked like it was a little over sharpened, at least on my screen. I have a very large monitor here in my office, and it started to look like it was a little over sharpened. So just double check that. It may not be, but just for your own, just kind of double check that when you get home, so you don't kind of go over the line there with the pixelization caused by over sharpening.
Okay. And then first place, hanging by the tips of my toes, Tony McQuare.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, I think when the pictures came through, this was one of the first ones that I saw, and I already wrote this down as this is, you know, definitely a possibility. And then I can't blow it up, which is probably good. I can't blow it up any more than is allowed on what's sent through. So I couldn't really see if the head was super sharp, but it certainly looked like that on my monitor. So I gave you credit thinking it actually did. I mean, how the hands and the feet and the whatever these are actually touching, all four are touching, you know, like, you know, holding on for dear life, whatever. Beautiful colors, the nice green background, whether you did that later or had something very green or just, you know, it's very hard when you're trying to get that whole insect, the dragonfly in focus to make sure that nothing else is. So however you did it, it doesn't matter. You succeeded. That background is so muted that the brown dragonfly just jumps right out. I think the only thing I would do is I would crop a little bit off the right-hand side. There just seems to be a little smushiness on the right. So I would take like a quarter off, you know, maybe not too much, just a quarter off. They don't really need all that on the right-hand side. I know you always want the thing to be looking into something, but you don't need quite that much. So just take part of it off. There's some kind of an aberration or something in the kind of the bottom third of the edge there. So that's it.
All right, now moving to advanced and honorable mention, we have White Rose by Kate Crowley.
Ah, okay. So Kate, is Kate here today? Is she online? Okay, well, if Kate isn't, somebody can, I loved all the swirls and all the curls and the movement. It was wonderful. And the selective focus on this one. I mean, she really did a very, very good job on it. And, you know, the whole circle idea, your eye just keeps going around and around and around and leads you right in there. I would actually crop it even a little bit more because the bottom left-hand side is a little distracting. But I also would change the name of it. It is not white. It is very cream. On my monitor, it even looked more creamy. And so that was one of my comments that, you know, maybe you title it something a little more generic than White Rose. So I'm just giving Kate a hard time. Kate and I go back many, many years with the Tri-Club competition. So next, please.
In third place, we have Marble Mountain, Steve Tate.
Oh God. I saw the other one first, the one with the needle in it first, and I thought, oh, this is really great. Nothing could be compared to this. And then I saw the marbles come up and said, you guys are actually thinking this through and trying to come up with a wonderful way of doing it. And I've done marbles. I love to shoot marbles for close-up work. And this is one of the best I've seen. This is really good. I'd probably try to change the color in the background from brown. It's just kind of disturbing. Any other, I don't know. It's just not a pleasant color, at least on my screen. You know, just try to pull one of the colors out from from what you see, in your picture, maybe a blue or maybe the orange, I don't know, it could be. But great. I mean, nice depth of field. The ones in the foreground are in focus. The ones in the background aren't. Perfect. I mean, you did a great job. Nice, a little more vertical. I think I'd like to just a little bit more vertical, diagonal. I'm sorry. A little more diagonal line going through, but great job.
Okay, in second place, we have Needlepoint, Pat Webster.
All right, so this is the one that I saw that I said, oh, now these people are actually spending some time and actually photographing close up. To actually have the thread coming through the eye of the needle in such a absolutely creative way. I totally commend you. I don't know if you had to glue it onto the needle to make it stay in that curve or not, but the great pile of buttons and that you got them all in such a creative way with the colors. I mean, really, really nice. And I don't mind, the background on this one is much more pleasing. It sort of picks up the greens in the foreground buttons there. The only thing that is a little distracting are on the very left, just above the green button on the left, and the right-hand side, just above the red button, there's white areas there. I would have made those the same color of the background, or try to put another button in there or something. Just change that from a white, because your eye always goes to white. And so when I circled that white of the thread, my eye went to the two sides of the white on either side of the button. So play with that a little bit more. But yeah, really, really cool shot.
And in first place, Sunrise Sea Oats, Freddie Hoffman.
Okay, love this from the very first time I saw it, as I was did my own run through coming through. I love the soft color, the yellows coming through with the greens. I love that you could see. Now, again, my first thought was, oh my God, this isn't macro. But then I thought, oh, well, I really have no idea how this could be one of those little sea oat things. So it really could be macro, it could be one-to-one. But regardless, I know that you weren't strict on the macro, close-up thing. But beautiful composition, and you've been doing it a long time. You know what you're doing. But I do love the line going through the top, the branch of it, or whatever you call the top part of the oat that puts it all together. Nice diagonal going there, leading out of the screen. Really nice backlighting. I mean, that's what made this picture is the backlighting on it, where you see that yellow coming through. So it really did speak to me. Maybe open up the shadows a little tiny bit more on that third one over. But all in all, I thought this was one of the best ones. Now, I will admit, and I know you can't pull it up on your screen, or I don't think you can, but there was a picture that I missed that would have gotten into the top 3 pictures. And it was the Christmas cactus. And although, are you going to try to put it up there or not? No. Okay. I don't know what you're doing. So talk to me. Somehow, when I did 2 run-throughs, there we are, if you could click on it, it is absolutely beautiful. The coloration of it draws my attention right away. Obviously, I just talked about the whites. Yes, my eye goes right to the whites. Really, really beautifully well done with the black background and the lighting on it. Again, the colors and the leaves, the curves of the leaves, very much a fine art picture. It's almost, again, I'm just looking at it for the first time, as when you did the run through. Something it's top heavy, I know that, but I'm not quite sure what I would do to make it better or something, but it has a lot of potential. I do love it a lot, and it would have been in the top 3, and I do apologize to the maker for somehow totally missing this piece. So that's all I can say. I'm human.
Okay, moving on to expert. And honorable mention, we have Half Corked, John Hop.
Sorry. Half cork. Yes, yes. Okay. We talked about that a little bit when we were walking, doing the run, the run through earlier. I mean, this could be a one-to-one macro shot. At first, I wasn't even going to consider it. It just seemed too documentary to me. But then I started thinking, this person actually had to figure out an interesting macro shot to do. And what's more interesting than a bottle of wine and a cork, and you show enough. I would have shown just a little bit more maybe of the bottle, but you certainly had a really interesting with the cork, the curves of the screw going through, add attention there. The light on it, the light shining on it brings your attention right to that and down to the cork. So all the elements are there. I really commend you for coming up with something very unique. And I can see you printing this and putting it, in your kitchen.
Okay, thank you. In third place, we have ICU, Corky Burt.
All right, so I originally said, no, it's not close up. I know I'm not supposed to do that. And anything that's actually in there is what you consider close up. But I thought, no. So I went to all the other ones and came back and said, but I really do like that pelican. I mean, it is so beautiful. I mean, it's so detailed. The lighting is wonderful. Look at the eye. You can even see the pink in the eye. It's like, how can I not give this beautiful picture an award? So I did back down and said, yes, it is deserving. It's definitely deserving of an award in close-ups, because he obviously was close up to the pelican.
All right.
And the nice leading, the composition of it. I mean, it's not just the sharpness of it and the detail and everything. You can just leave the screen the way it is. I mean, look at the way the diagonal line for the novices too. Look at how that diagonal line of that beak starts at the bottom and goes right up. So your eye goes right to that eye and circles all the way around. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. It's a good shot.
Okay, thank you. In second place, Butterfly and Flowers, Stan Latucci.
I like this. I like this a lot right from the beginning. It was one of my favorite shots. The only thing, well, I shouldn't start. Everything is great with it. The color of the butterfly, the detail of the butterfly. I mean, it almost looks painterly. With the way the wings are and everything, it doesn't even look like it's a real picture. And the butterfly is holding on so perfectly to that flower. So, I mean, composition wise, everything is great. And certainly it was the right color of the butterfly. The only thing that's distracting is the two flowers that are in the garden with the butterfly that are out of focus. And the one certainly on the left is out of focus because it was moving. And I thought, oh my God, if that flower is moving, how did you ever capture that butterfly on the one that's standing still? I mean, it's actually movement. I can see, it's not just out of focus. It appears to be out of focus because of movement. And the same thing with the one on the right-hand side. Keep in mind, when you're submitting things for competitions like this, these are not straight nature photographs. The topic isn't nature, the topic is close-up. You can remove those, content aware, and remove those distracting elements on the left-hand side or the right-hand side to some degree, and make it a less distracting picture. Just try it and see. Just keep an open mind is what I want to leave you with. Just keep an open mind and try some different things. Don't just do the documentary of this beautiful butterfly, but make it into a work of art.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. And in first place, Mushroom Forest, Tom Mills.
This was, this was gorgeous. Again, look at how many of the winners were backlit. I mean, it really adds so much to the impact of a picture when you see that light coming either down or up from the bottom or across. Everything is that's important, is in focus. the bug is certainly in, or it looks like it's in focus again. I couldn't blow it up to see, but it certainly is. But you know, the composition, and I'm assuming he didn't clip off different mushrooms, but if he did, that's fine. But you know, nature should not be harmed in any way. But you know, we've got the one on the left is curved up into the higher one next to it. You know, it looks like an orchestra over here. You know, ups and downs, little skyscrapers, you know, the composition is in nature, but you were able to capture that composition really beautifully. And, you know, even keeping all the interesting bark on the bottom and the fuzziness of the leaves or the green stuff, the moss and all that stuff. It took it from a straight documentary shot to a really more interesting fine art photograph. Look at the background on this one too. Muted greens and blues. You know, you novices, take a look again, if you have the opportunity to, at some of these advanced and your own winners too, but some of these advanced and expert winners, and take a look and see how it sets it apart from some of the other ones. So thank you.
And that's it. Just want to remind everybody that next month our theme will be black and white, no sepia, 2-year limit. So look at what you can do between now and then in black and white, or what you may already have. And good luck.
Remember to use if you're in Lightroom and you're taking a picture and just clicking the black and white button to see what it could look like, then also go down and take those individual sliders for each individual color, and you'd be amazed what a difference it makes in making a really good black and white picture when you move that blue all the way over or move the yellow over, you know, obviously depending on what colors are in your picture, but do take a look at that. Don't just hit black and white, or just don't go into Silver FX Pro or whatever and do black and white. Play around a little with it. Have a good time.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations to all the winners. It's going to be a real task to get all these pictures in the window.
Thank you, Sandy. It was excellent.
Yeah, great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
This was really, really helpful. As the Education Committee is working on photography as art this year, you've moved us so far along. It was fabulous. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Sandy, thank you again for giving us names of all those artists that in your exhibit. It's quite helpful to see what they've done and gain so much from your presentation tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay.
You're muted, Jim.
I'm sorry. I was thanking Sandy and saying that ends tonight's meeting. So.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.